Let me tell you about my 1965 Mustang. It wasn't just a car. It was a piece of my heart, a symbol of everything I loved. That Mustang had history, character, and soul. I spent years fixing it up, pouring hours into making sure every detail was perfect. The shiny red paint sparkled like sunlight on water, and the chrome parts gleamed so brightly you could almost see your reflection. It wasn't just transportation, it was art on wheels. When I first brought it home to our quiet suburban neighborhood, people couldn't stop talking about it. Kids would gather around when I parked it in the driveway, pointing at the sleek curves and asking questions like, "How fast does it go?" Or, "Is this really an old car?" Even adults would pause to admire it, some nodding in approval while others snapped pictures with their phones. It felt good to own something that made people smile. But not everyone shared the same excitement. Karen, who lived 3 houses down, didn't seem to think much of my prized possession. She was the kind of person who liked things a certain way. Perfectly trimmed lawns, matching flower pots, and cars that looked like they belonged in a showroom. Her house was always spotless, her yard picture perfect, and her life seemingly flawless. And apparently, my Mustang didn't fit into her idea of perfection. One day, as I was washing the car in the driveway, Karen walked over. At first, I thought she might compliment it or ask about its history. Instead, she crossed her arms and frowned. "You know," she said, her voice dripping with disapproval, "that thing is awfully loud. Don't you think it's a bit much?" I blinked, surprised by her tone. "It's a classic car," I replied, keeping my voice friendly. "They're supposed to have personality." Karen tilted her head, giving me a tight smile. "Personality. I call it noise. And the smell." She wrinkled her nose dramatically. "It stinks like fuel. Honestly, don't you think it sticks out like a sore thumb here?" Her words caught me off guard. Sure, my Mustang wasn't exactly subtle, but it wasn't meant to blend in either. It was bold, unique, and full of life, the complete opposite of Karen's sterile world. Still, I tried to brush off her comment. Maybe she was just having a bad day. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, Karen found new ways to criticize my car. Sometimes, she'd leave notes on my windshield. "Please consider parking elsewhere," or "This doesn't match the neighborhood vibe." Other times, she'd make snide remarks at community events, calling my Mustang dated or saying it ruined the aesthetic. Each jab stung a little more than the last, but I refused to let her get to me. After all, it was my asterisk car, and I wasn't going to change anything because someone else didn't like it. What I didn't realize back then was how deep her dislike ran, or how far she'd be willing to take it. Looking back, those early encounters were just the calm before the storm. Little did I know, Karen's hatred for my Mustang was about to explode into something far more dangerous. Karen's disapproval of my Mustang didn't stay subtle for long. What started as passive-aggressive comments and notes on my windshield quickly escalated into something more personal. It was as if my car had become her personal mission, a problem she couldn't ignore no matter how hard she tried. At first, I thought it was funny, even a little ridiculous. Who gets this worked up over a car? But the more time passed, the clearer it became that Karen wasn't just annoyed, she was obsessed. It wasn't uncommon to see her peeking out from behind her curtains whenever I pulled into the driveway. Once I caught her staring so intently that I waved at her. She immediately dropped the curtain and disappeared, leaving me standing there feeling confused and slightly creeped out. Another time, I noticed her snapping photos of my Mustang with her phone. When I asked her about it later, she shrugged it off, saying, "I'm just documenting neighborhood concerns." Concerns about a car. It made no sense, but I decided not to press the issue. After all, what could she possibly do? Her complaints weren't limited to our one-on-one interactions either. Soon enough, she began airing her grievances at neighborhood gatherings. During one particularly awkward block party, she cornered me near the snack table while other neighbors pretended not to listen. "You know," she said, her voice laced with fake sweetness, A lot of people have mentioned how out of place your car feels here. Don't you think it's time for an upgrade? Something quieter, less flashy. Less asterisk me asterisk you mean. I shot back, trying to keep my tone light despite the irritation bubbling inside me. Not everyone wants a boring sit-in, Karen. Her smile faltered for a moment, but she recovered quickly. Oh, I'm not suggesting anything boring. Just modern, practical. A car that fits in better with the neighborhood's vibe. The way she said vibe made me want to laugh. Since when did neighborhoods need a vibe? And why did mine have to conform to hers? Still, I bit my tongue and walked away, hoping she'd eventually tire of her crusade against my Mustang. Spoiler alert, she didn't. Things got worse after that. One morning, I found another note tucked under my windshield wiper. This one read, "Your car is lowering property values. Please reconsider your choices. Lowering property values." Really? I stared at the paper, dumbfounded. How could a beautifully restored classic car possibly hurt anyone's home value? It was absurd. But what bothered me most wasn't the accusation. It was the implication that I should change who I was to satisfy her ridiculous standards. Other neighbors started chiming in too, though they were far less direct than Karen. Some offered hesitant smiles and muttered things like, "It's definitely unique," or "I can see why Karen feels strongly about it." No one outright defended me, though. Instead, they tiptoed around the topic, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge Karen's growing influence. Even Mark, my husband, started questioning whether keeping the Mustang was worth all the drama. "Maybe we could park it in the garage more often," he suggested one evening, his voice careful, just to avoid upsetting people. I stared at him, incredulous. "Are you serious? We're not hiding my car because someone doesn't like it. That's insane." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm just saying. Sometimes it's easier to pick your battles." But this wasn't a battle I was willing to lose. My Mustang wasn't just a possession. It represented freedom, individuality, and years of hard work. Giving in to Karen's demands would mean letting her win, and I refused to let that happen. Little did I know, her campaign against my car was about to take a turn darker than I ever imagined. It was a Tuesday night when everything changed. I had gone to bed early, exhausted from a long day at work, but something woke me up around midnight. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. A noise, a feeling. Then I heard it, the unmistakable crackle of fire. My heart skipped a beat as I bolted upright in bed, adrenaline surging through me. Throwing off the covers, I rushed to the window and pulled back the curtains. What I saw made my blood run cold. Outside, in the driveway where my beloved Mustang usually sat, was a raging inferno. Flames roared hungrily, consuming the car I had worked so hard to restore. The once gleaming red paint was now blackened and blistered, the chrome melting under the intense heat. Thick smoke billowed into the sky, filling the air with an acrid stench that burned my nostrils. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of nightmare. But the heat radiating through the glass told me otherwise. Panic set in as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands trembling so badly I could barely press the numbers. "My car is on fire." I shouted into the receiver, tears streaming down my face. "Please hurry." As I waited for help to arrive, I threw on a robe and ran outside, coughing as the smoke filled my lungs. Neighbors began emerging from their homes, drawn by the chaos. Some stood silently, watching the destruction unfold, while others muttered words of sympathy or tried to comfort me. But one person caught my attention immediately, Karen. She stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed and lips pressed into a thin line. Her expression wasn't one of shock or concern. It was satisfaction. Pure, unfiltered satisfaction. The sight of her sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. How could anyone look so pleased while my world burned to ashes? It didn't make sense. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. and Karen's smug demeanor only confirmed my suspicions. By the time the firefighters arrived, there was nothing left of my Mustang but a charred skeleton. They worked quickly to douse the flames, their hoses spraying water onto the wreckage until the fire finally sputtered out. As the smoke cleared, I noticed something strange. The smell lingering in the air wasn't just gasoline. It was sharper, more chemical-like, like kerosene. That detail sent a chill down my spine. Whoever had torched my car hadn't used ordinary means. They'd come prepared. I turned back to the crowd, scanning faces for any sign of guilt or remorse. Most people avoided my gaze, shifting uncomfortably or whispering among themselves. But Karen remained perfectly still, her eyes locked onto mine. For a brief second, our stares collided, and I saw it, a flicker of defiance mixed with triumph. She didn't say a word, but her message was loud and clear. Asterisk, this is your fault, asterisk. That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flames licking at my car, heard the crackling roar of destruction. Questions swirled in my mind. Had Karen acted alone? Did someone help her? Or worse, was she covering for someone else? One thing was certain, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of Karen's satisfied smirk from my mind. It haunted me. Her calm demeanor, her crossed arms, the way she'd stood there as if she'd won some kind of twisted victory. My blood boiled every time I thought about it. How dare she destroy something so precious to me? And how could she act like it was no big deal? I decided I needed answers. After a restless night spent staring at the ceiling, I stormed over to Karen's house. Her pristine white colonial looked as perfect as ever, its matching hydrangeas swaying gently in the breeze. For a moment, I hesitated on her front step, wondering if I was making a mistake. But then I remembered the charred remains of my Mustang and pushed the doorbell with more force than necessary. Karen answered the door looking as composed as always, dressed in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She raised an eyebrow at me, feigning surprise. "Can I help you?" she asked coolly, her tone dripping with fake politeness. "You burned my car." I blurted out, my voice shaking with anger. "How could you do something so crazy?" To my astonishment, she didn't deny it. Instead, she laughed, a cold, brittle sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Oh, please," she said, rolling her eyes. "Don't flatter yourself. If I wanted to get rid of that eyesore, I would have done it legally. Filed complaints with the HOA, organized petitions, maybe even pressured the city for noise ordinances. There are rules for these things, you know." Her denial infuriated me, but there was something else in her words, a hint of truth buried beneath the lies. She hadn't acted alone. Someone had helped her, or worse, covered for her. The thought made my stomach churn. "You expect me to believe you didn't have anything to do with this?" I demanded, stepping closer. "Because I saw your face last night, Karen. You looked thrilled." She smirked, leaning against the doorframe like she didn't have a care in the world. "Let's say, for argument's sake, that I did have something to do with it," she said, lowering her voice. "What are you going to do about it? Go running to the police? Good luck proving anything." Her confidence unnerved me. She was right. I had no proof, just my gut feeling and the memory of her smug expression. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. "People will find out," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "They'll figure out what you did." Karen chuckled again, clearly amused by my threat. "Oh, honey, people around here don't care about your little project. They're relieved it's gone. Trust me, they were thanking me before the ashes even cooled." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Was she telling the truth? Had everyone been silently cheering her on while pretending to sympathize with me? The thought made me sick. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Karen wasn't going to admit anything. If I wanted justice, I'd have to dig deeper. As I turned to leave, she called after me, her voice dripping with mockery. "You brought this on yourself, you know. That car ruined everything." Ruined asterisk me asterisk people judged me because of it. They thought I couldn't control my own street. Well, now it's gone. Problem solved. Her words echoed in my head as I walked back home. She wasn't just angry about the car. This was about power, control, maybe even jealousy. Whatever her reasons, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. After my confrontation with Karen, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something big. Her smugness wasn't just arrogance. It was confidence. She knew she had the upper hand because she thought I had no proof. But I wasn't about to let her walk away scot-free. If she wanted a fight, she was going to get one. I started by talking to the neighbors. At first, people were hesitant to say much. Some avoided eye contact altogether, while others muttered vague condolences and changed the subject. But as I pressed harder, little pieces of information began to surface. One neighbor mentioned seeing Karen arguing with a man late at night near her garage. Another recalled hearing unusual noises coming from her property around the time of the fire. Metal clanging, engines revving, things that didn't quite fit in our quiet cul-de-sac. The most interesting detail came from Mrs. Dawson, who lived across the street. She told me she'd seen someone carrying what looked like a large tank into Karen's garage a few days before the fire. I thought it was strange, she admitted, lowering her voice. But I didn't want to pry. You know how Karen gets when people ask too many questions. That comment stuck with me. A large tank. It sounded suspiciously like the kind of equipment you'd need for something dangerous. My mind raced with possibilities, but I needed concrete evidence. So I decided to dig deeper. My next stop was the neighborhood association office. They kept records of everything. Meeting minutes, complaints, even receipts submitted for HOA-related expenses. I figured if Karen had bought anything unusual recently, it might be documented there. Sure enough, after sifting through stacks of papers, I found something shocking. A purchase order submitted by Karen for landscaping equipment. Among the items listed was a flamethrower. A FLAMETHROWER. Who buys a flamethrower for landscaping? The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, if it weren't so horrifying. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The chemical smell lingering after the fire, the deliberate destruction of my car, Karen's eerie composure. It all pointed to one conclusion. She hadn't just hired someone to torch my Mustang. She'd done it herself. Armed with this new information, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about my car anymore. It was about standing up to someone who thought she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. I printed copies of the receipt and gathered statements from the neighbors who had shared their observations. Then, I went back to Karen's house, ready to confront her again. This time, I didn't hold back. When she opened the door, I held up the receipt and said, "Care to explain why you bought a flamethrower, Karen?" Her face went pale for a split second, but then her lips curled into a sneer. "You really think anyone will believe you?" She spat. "You're grasping at straws." "Am I?" I shot back, stepping closer. "Because I got witnesses who saw you acting suspiciously, plus this lovely piece of paper linking you to the weapon used to burn my car. Tell me, Karen, how does it feel knowing you're finally caught?" For the first time since I'd met her, Karen looked rattled. Her confident facade cracked, revealing the insecure, vindictive person underneath. "You don't understand," she snapped. "That car ruined everything. People judged me because of it. They thought I couldn't keep things under control. So you destroyed it?" I asked, incredulous. "You torched my car to save your reputation." She didn't answer, but her silence said it all. I left her standing there, trembling with anger and fear, knowing exactly what I had to do next. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about holding her accountable. And I wasn't backing down until justice was served. Armed with the receipt for the flamethrower and the statements from neighbors, I headed straight to the police station. My hands were shaking as I handed over the evidence, but my voice was steady. I explained everything. The escalating tension with Karen, her obsession with my Mustang, the suspicious activity reported by neighbors, And finally, the smoking gun, her purchase of a flamethrower disguised as landscaping equipment. At first, the officer seemed skeptical. "A flamethrower?" he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's unusual. I know it sounds crazy," I admitted, leaning forward earnestly. "But think about it. Why else would someone buy something like that unless they intended to use it? And look at the timeline. It matches up perfectly with when my car was burned." He studied the documents carefully, his expression shifting from doubt to concern. After a few minutes of silence, he nodded. "This is enough to warrant an investigation. We'll need to bring her in for questioning." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As much as I wanted justice, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Karen had spent years cultivating her image as the perfect neighbor, a woman who cared deeply about the community and its rules. Convincing people she was capable of arson wouldn't be simple. Still, I felt a flicker of hope for the first time since the fire. The next day, the police visited Karen's house. Through my living room window, I watched as officers knocked on her door, their presence impossible to ignore. She stepped outside looking calm at first, but as they began asking questions, her composure started to crack. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I saw her gesture wildly, her face flushed with anger, or maybe fear. Eventually, they asked her to come with them for further questioning. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. By evening, everyone knew Karen was under investigation. Some neighbors approached me cautiously, offering apologies or admitting they'd noticed her strange behavior, but hadn't spoken up. Others avoided me altogether, clearly uncomfortable with the drama unfolding around them. But no matter how divided the community was, one thing was clear: Karen's reign of control was crumbling. A few days later, the police announced they had enough evidence to charge her. The flamethrower matched traces found at the scene of the fire, and witness testimonies backed up my claims. When officers arrived at her house to arrest her, she didn't resist. Instead, she stood on her porch, her usual poise replaced by defeat, as they cuffed her and led her away. It was surreal, watching someone who had always seemed so untouchable suddenly fall apart. As satisfying as it was to see her brought to justice, the victory felt hollow. Nothing could bring my Mustang back. No amount of punishment could undo the damage she'd caused, not just to my car, but to the sense of safety and trust I once had in my neighborhood. Every time I looked at the empty driveway where my Mustang used to sit, I felt a pang of loss. That car wasn't just metal and paint, it was a part of me. Still, I refused to let Karen win completely. Her actions had shattered something beautiful, but they'd also taught me a valuable lesson about standing up for myself. If I hadn't fought back, if I'd let her intimidate me into silence, she would have gotten away with it. And that thought scared me more than anything else. In the weeks that followed Karen's arrest, life in the neighborhood felt different. Quieter, heavier. Without her constant presence and control, there was an odd sense of relief, but also unease. People who had once tiptoed around her now seemed unsure how to act, as if they were waiting for another storm to hit. For me, though, it wasn't enough. The damage was done. And no matter what happened next, I couldn't shake the feeling that this place would never feel like home again. Every time I looked at the charred patch of driveway where my Mustang used to sit, memories came flooding back. The roar of its engine, the way sunlight danced on its glossy red paint, the countless hours I'd spent restoring it to perfection. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of everything I loved about freedom, creativity, and self-expression. And now it was gone, reduced to ashes because of someone else's jealousy and need for control. I tried to focus on the positives. Karen was facing charges and justice was being served. Or so everyone kept telling me. But deep down, I knew that no court ruling could truly make things right. My Mustang was irreplaceable, and nothing could fill the void it left behind. Even worse, the fire had burned more than just metal and rubber. It had scorched my trust in people, in communities, in the idea that kindness could outweigh envy. Mark noticed the change in me. "You're not the same," He said one evening as we sat together on the couch. "You've been distant, distracted. Are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted after a long pause. "I thought seeing Karen arrested would fix things, but it doesn't. This place, this neighborhood feels tainted now. Every corner reminds me of what she did, of how everyone stood by and let it happen." He nodded slowly, understanding without needing further explanation. "Maybe it's time for a fresh start," he suggested gently. "Somewhere new, where you don't have those reminders hanging over you." At first, the idea felt overwhelming. Moving meant leaving behind not just the bad memories, but the good ones too. The friendships I'd built, the quiet mornings sipping coffee on the porch, the peaceful walks through tree-lined streets. But the longer I thought about it, the more appealing it became. Staying here meant living in Karen's shadow, constantly reminded of her cruelty and the fragility of the world she had created. Leaving meant reclaiming my life, my peace of mind. With the insurance money from the fire, I decided to buy another classic car, a 1970 Camaro. It wasn't the same as my Mustang, of course, but it had character and charm, just like its predecessor. Working on it gave me purpose again, something to pour my energy into instead of dwelling on the past. As I restored its dents and polished its chrome, I began to heal, not completely, but enough to imagine a future beyond the pain. When the moving truck arrived, I took one last look at the house that had once been my sanctuary. Neighbors waved goodbye from their porches, some offering apologies, others simply watching silently. I didn't hold any grudges against them. They hadn't been the ones to burn my car. But I couldn't stay in a place where fear and conformity ruled. As I drove away in my Camaro, I glanced in the rearview mirror at Karen's empty house. Its pristine white walls and matching hydrangeas seemed hollow now, stripped of the power they once held. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness, not for Karen, but for the person she might have been if she hadn't let envy consume her. Living life controlled by bitterness must be exhausting. But I wasn't going to waste another moment thinking about her. Instead, I focused on the open road ahead, the hum of the engine beneath me, and the promise of a new beginning. Sometimes, moving forward means letting go, not just of the past, but of the people who tried to destroy it. And for the first time in months, I felt free.